All right. The disproportionate rate of published comics and related books from a black perspective is a concern. This leads many African diasporans to the obvious alternative, self-publishing. For me, this is a plus and should be championed as the main avenue for us to approach. On the downside of do-it-yourself, progressive and effective advertising, critical mass, it can be sparse. The independent route is often a struggle financially, emotionally, spiritually, and otherwise. What strategies should we, or do you yourselves, practice to continue pushing forth your self-published projects?
I can start out and just say that the internet is probably the most powerful tool you have out there right now. There's so many social networks. Like I said, I've had my own website since 2003, so that's been a very big help for me. But you know, there's Facebook, there's YouTube. Make full use of it. And in my opinion, there's really no excuse. You don't have to really go through a company anymore. You can do it yourself.
Okay. What I usually stress, I mean, in addition to internet, is it's just being creative, thinking outside the box. Because even for those who use the internet, some people use so much internet that they don't actually go outside. When there's nothing like going out and being among the people. Like, this is what I enjoy, is actually meeting people. And when we're building our company, we're doing the Black Expo circuit, which isn't as big as it used to be, but that created an outlet for a lot of black business owners, and there was a huge significant power in that, which I would like to see come back in addition to the internet. Because then if you imagine doing an event like the Black Expo or for Sisters Only, and you have a website. So now you're among people and you're dealing directly with your community without a middleman, and you're promoting yourself worldwide. So you're getting the best of both worlds. But I'm throwing that out there as an example of, you may have access to something I don't know nothing about. So as an individual, you have to look at your own resources, look at what you have the ability to do, and it may not necessarily be what I did or what anybody else on the panel did. And sometimes we may not think about the power in what we possess because we're busy looking for the answer outside of us, when sometimes the answer is within us, when we have to take a moment to reflect on, what do I have access to? What can I actually do in addition to what they did? And that's what makes you unique and stand out and prosper. So that's usually my perspective is, taking what we're saying, but also don't look at that as, that's the end all. Look within yourself for some creative avenues.
I would just also say, word of mouth, that's the old school method, and passing that word on, even going into non-traditional settings that people may not expect you to be there. And sometimes you might find somebody who actually has that interest, but because you went, and if you didn't go there, you might miss that one person who could maybe spread that word to other people.
Another part, somewhat of the same question. We live in a mainstream culture. We live in a corporate colony. So how do we navigate in this system without feeling that everything we produce as artists must be acquired by a big corporation to make it successful, and thus make us a decent living to support ourselves or our families?
This is something that I guess that I've struggled with over the years, but I've always been very fortunate that I was able to use my talent to also do contract work for other companies as well. So that was kind of like my way of sustaining myself, but also afforded me the time to do my own projects as well. So.
Yeah, I would say, you kind of just have to be creative in terms of, how we get our works. Actually, I'm drawing a blank there because I'm thinking of like a collective of ideas. I was wondering, can you give me a specific?
Well, I guess I'm saying I find time and time, like if I'm on some of the forums online, for instance, a lot of brothers and sisters that are coming out with books feel like, how successful will I be if I do this struggling, oh man, I went how many years and I still haven't gotten enough to really eat off of this. And then they may see somebody else who's been kind of doing what they were doing, but then they also had some connects to some mainstream stuff, and they got picked up.
So
and they
the
said,
power of distribution.
what's up?
The power of distribution.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a factor. But just knowing that it's kind of like, it's the same in a lot of me. It's just like, you know, somebody in the music industry, do I stay independent and no matter what I'm gonna be independent?
Okay.
Or do I, that's kind of what
Yeah, I think what I was trying to figure out was, is the question, should I do either or?
Yeah.
How do I fuse the two?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
However you want to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, however you want to put it.
Well, I say in my history, you know, I've been an entrepreneur since high school. You know, when I was going to high school in Philly, I said I never wanted to work for anybody. But you know, eventually, I did work for somebody, but the majority of my career from age 19 on up was just taking my artwork directly to people. Like I was airbrushing, silk screening shirts. That was all through the 80s, and then finally when I got to the 90s, I said, hey, I want to do a comic book. I didn't know anybody who did comic books. I just did. I never thought of, I need somebody to publish me. I never thought of any hindrance. You know, there was never any blockage in my mind that I can't do anything. I just do it. And I didn't get studio experience until after my run of doing Brother Man from 90 to 95. And then in 96, I went to New York and I was doing game animation in Soho. Then I went out to LA and I got animations experience out there in Hollywood, and then came to Atlanta at Turner. But each time I worked at those studios, I never turned off the entrepreneur thought to say, okay, I'm here now, I made it, I'm in the studio. I always recognized this is their entity, I'm creating what they want me to create, I'm learning new tactics and techniques that'll help me with my thing when I get back to it. And these are the things that I actually never learned when I was on the streets, airbrushing. So to me, it was almost like getting paid to go to school. So when I talk to younger people about it, I can share with them the experience of working in a professional studio environment around professional artists, but I can also talk about getting my own store in North Philadelphia, hole-in-the-wall joint, dudes walking in, you don't know what's going on, but they're shelling out money, and I'm the owner. I own what I control, and I own and control what I do, and there was multi-levels to being an entrepreneur. So I had both sides of it. So to me, I look at it as, I never looked at it as one being better than the other. I found balance in it, and ultimately where I want to go is basically taking what I learned over here, and then building big city entertainment, which will stand on its own, but it can rival the type of place that I worked at to get the information. So I think something like that for artists, I don't say you really have to choose one or the other. I don't think it's anything wrong with getting the experience if you can get it. If you can't get it and they don't hire you, like my man said, get online and do the tutorials and be independent and do as much as you can. We just have to block out that whole concept of you can't do something.
Right.
Just move on the energy of whatever it is I want to do, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And you may draw that person who's going to finance you, or you may end up being the self-financer. But people are observing the fact that you are creating, you're making something tangible either way. I hope that was helpful.
That's cool, no doubt. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Get the morale, you know. Because believe me, you know, in this intimate of a setting, I don't want y'all staring at us like, and we don't know if you like what we're saying or not. That really, ooh, okay. Go ahead, Grace. Okay. Next question. After growing up in and still being drawn to some mainstream concepts in comics, films, video games, and other media, from a very narrow cultural cycle of iconography and archetypes, how do we avoid regurgitating the same themes, stories, and archetypes over and over again in a movement like the Black Age of comics, Afrofuturism, and the like? Or do we feel it's okay to imitate the same cultural iconography and archetypes but with a black face?
I think we have to kind of create our own. And being like in academics, I try to use that as my way to inform the masses that there is mainstream, but there is another option, and that we can go down that road, and you don't have to say, oh well, I got to look just like Superman, but just put on a black face. Like you can create your own character, and we can create new images, because there's so many stereotypical images out there that people feel is, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. And then, but you have characters, I'll take for example Martha Washington, who I strongly feel is, she disrupts those traditional notions of a superwoman or of a Wonder Woman. And a lot of people haven't heard of her. And it's like, people like me, I want to say, I want people to know that there are other comics or other actresses or other actors that can step away from that traditional and still be successful, still make the money, and still be profitable. So I think just being able to say that it's okay to be the not traditional person, to be unconventional, you know, and it's acceptable.
I would just say that, yeah, I think it's better to be original. And one of the things that I do, though, like I'll tell people, like one of my ideas maybe is kind of like something that's in the mainstream, but it's not really, but that's just a selling point. Like I'll say, yeah, this is kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's really not, but you know, just sometimes you gotta do that as a selling point, just to say, you know, if you want people to look at it or take a look at it, and they'll see, once they read it, they'll see it's more original, you know. And I like he was talking earlier about the Sword and Soul books. You know, there's so much to our heritage, and there's so much mythology that goes on in Africa that, you know, once you learn about it, it's completely different from what's out there. You know, so there's that void out there right now that, you know, needs to be filled. I think, as far as like black people doing more fantasy projects, and you know, there's so much of our mythology that's not been told that it's like new ground, pretty much.
That's the gold chest when it comes to
Right.
stories.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, I'd like to add to what Chris was saying. That I think as much as we want to be original, there's nothing original. It's like it's just another perspective. It's another spin on what's already been done, which makes it unique and makes it fresh and fly. You know, that's what we want. That's what we want to see. I haven't seen anything like that, and I think as long as we, because a lot of people say, well, how do I do that? How do I be, you know, unique? How do I be original or whatever? And you know, I have this art instructional series called Drawing from the Soul, and when I usually do presentations for children, or you know, just aspiring artists, whatever, you know, in addition to just teaching them how to draw, I try to get them in the frame of mind of thought, the thought process of what it is that you draw, and looking for, like, drawing from the soul is basically, and that's not anything that's solely just ours. When you look at Asian culture, anybody, they draw from their spirit, they draw from their energy of their culture. They're not always concerned about what you're doing over here, because there's a plethora of things right in their space. Like, this is our spirituality, this is how we do this is how we do that. And they thrust that out there to the point where we look at it and say, wow, man, I want to be like that. Because they take their culture and they connect it with action and suspense and drama and love, and connect you to them to the point where they are iconic in your brain, and you can't shake them from your brain. So when we need to do the same thing with our culture. You know, we have to say, well, you know what? Let me look at my mom was telling me these stories about what she went through, whatever. So I'm not thinking about Susan Storm. I'm not thinking about Medusa. I'm not thinking about all these other characters that are inundated in my mind. I'm thinking about my mom, my grandma. They told me all these stories, and it's like somebody should take their stories, blow it up huge, make it like people just want to be like my mom's, like my father, my grandfather. And then when you throw that out there, it's like 300 or more immortals. And everybody wants to be like your family. And what you did, you just drew from what was already there, but you never thought about it as being epic, because we're so used to epic being somebody else's story and culture.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I was listening to you, plus you're from North Philly.
Not from Northwest.
We from Philly.
Oh, yeah, Philly, yeah, Philly's straight, yeah.
And it's good to see the panel. But I just like to say, because I'm not an artist of any of this, but I'm glad I'm here. And I know from being around a little bit, there's really nothing new under the sun. But you have to know for surety what you, like you said about your mother and your father's father and other people's culture. Man, you can look back so far, man, and draw from anew from them. I mean, so much to bring up to right now to make people like us enjoy what we're looking at. That's what we want. That's all you're trying to do, man. And you're trying to bring the light to the new energy of the new people that you come into contact with, especially young people. They desperately in hope for something different. So y'all creators to me. I mean, look, man, I might seem like an old man, but I ain't that old. Yes, that's right. Smile at it. Man. Smile at it, bro, because I ain't that old. But I know for a surety, I only dreamt about being up there at the panel back in the 70s, 80s. Can't draw, can't write nothing, but in my mind, I've always wanted this. Now you are my future that's doing it. All right, man, I love it. So you can draw back as far as you want. You are the creator of the future, man. You can't be scared to tap into your own. Man, this is a beautiful color, man. We like spectrums of all color. We own it all. So if you want it all, just do it, man. Say that.
Cheers. All right. And it's beautiful because when I write these, this was going to be number 5, but now it's about to be number 3 or something. Pro-blackness, Pan-Africanism, black radicalism, Afrocentricity, and related are often undercurrents that have an understandable and selective place in the lineage of black comics produced by African Americans. But oftentimes, I feel many of my fellow creators limit the palette of African-based culture, influence, or potential in their work. I have witnessed creators circle familiar pools of influence that stay filled with creators swimming in Ifa of Yoruba, one of Nigeria's ethnic cultures, Kemet, ancient Egypt, Zulu warriors, specifically male, hardly ever female-driven, and maybe even Ashanti of Ghana. This is in no way to say that the following mentioned cultures should never be forgotten, not continue to be used. But what are we missing out on in limiting our heritage not to explore the thousands of other cultures in Africa we could reference? Do we see the reality of the diaspora in the world? Not to mention, do we do our story justice to ignore any Native American, European, Asian, or other ethnic genealogy we may share? And they get quiet. Score! That is the most powerful question.
I got one for you.
Get it.
I think it's happening. I think when we look at story development and the fact that historically, the continent, we talk about pulling stories from the African continent. I mean, just the African continent alone. We ain't talk about Brazil yet. You see what I'm saying? So
yes.
From the African continent alone, there's just like thousands, millions of stories.
Billions.
Right, to tell.
Yes.
And that's going to take, that's a movement. That's a movement in time. That's why people have to understand what's going on now is a movement. We're crafting the key. You see what I'm saying? Like what's going on is like we're all chiseling the key from here to Chicago, Detroit, with all the shows that are happening, like this Fantastic Blackness is going on now in LA. That's the first West Coast show. Yep. You see what I'm saying? So all these things, and there's black comics. Well, you ain't calling black comics in Africa. It's comics. Right. Like the folks that live there. You know what I mean? So, so that movement is eventually going to connect with over here. I see that happening. It's going to connect with what's going on over here, and then as it connects, this head's going to pop up over here. Tell them about this story. This head's going to pop up over here. We can't put all that weight just on Chris. You know what I'm saying? We can't put all that weight on one person. Each of us is going to tell the story from our perspective. You know, Brother Man had a heavy Philly influence, Jersey, New York influence, because that was my stomping ground coming up. But it was also connected to a lot of other things that my father and my family instilled in me. But I'm not the master at telling a story about ancient Kemet, because those are things that I came across later on that I was kind of tapped into at a certain level. But yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I was a product of Philadelphia public school system. They're not gonna teach us that. You see what I'm saying? But somebody else is coming up and that's their thing. They might own and control, you know, they may own and push that. And somebody's gonna come over here and tell a story over here. And I feel that that's how it's gonna happen. And then you're going to have this whole movement. In the future, we're gonna be looking back to this day and say, wow, man, that's how it started. Because everywhere I go, it's not, they don't even call it black comics anymore. Like I said, it's just comics. It's just a whole nother movement where we see ourselves in so many different realms that it's just normal for the kids. You know what I mean? So I just look at it as, I don't think that's like a requirement for an artist to say, well, you know what, I think I better do a story today about the Ashanti. You know what I mean? Because if you don't really know about it, it may not be your job to do it. You know what I mean? You may have to do your research, and if you do it, you might inspire somebody, but there may be somebody who might rise about it and be like, their spin on it is just perfect. You know what I mean? But that person may be a little baby right now. It didn't happen yet, reading the material that somebody else laid down. You know, so that's my perspective.
Right. And I would say, you know, it's already happening because you know, I have a friend and he's in the UK and he's working on an animated series called Hardwired. His name is Wayne Riley, and he's, you know, this is a black man, his family's from the West Indies, but you know, he lives in Great Britain right now, and that's a completely different perspective.
You talking about DC's Hardwired?
No, it's a completely different. It's a whole new series. He just started developing it last year, so it's, you know, that's a completely different perspective. And it's, you know, I have another business partner he lives in Kenya, and you know, he's telling me about all these different studios that are starting up in Nigeria and in Kenya as well. You know, different animation studios and doing their own comics and stuff like that. So it's happening already. And you know, as far as like artists like us, you know, if you wanna, like in my books, I try to, you know, put little tidbits of information in there. I don't necessarily have to, you know, beat someone over the head with certain types of information, but you know, like one of the characters in my book, Knuckleheads, like her uncle is named Dr. Clark. So that's named after Dr. John Henry Clark. You know, and it's not just beating them over the head with it, but saying like, hey, you know, just making that connection right there. So that's what I try to do in my work.
Being in an African American Studies major, I'm noticing the shift is coming even in this discipline, because there was a time where nobody was talking about popular culture in African American Studies. It was, you know, we're talking about Africa, we're talking about civil rights, that's what we're talking about. But now you're beginning to see a new generation coming into and bringing this to the forefront, and still including what is historical about African American studies or black studies or diaspora, or however you want to phrase it. And so I think the new generation is bringing that in, and it's taking new avenues, and so that's kind of how it's all coming together. And slowly but shortly, everybody's going to kind of get a little bit of taste about, you know, bringing in those African elements, like you said, without having to like beat somebody over the head with it.
All right. This is a slightly long one, but there's a good point to it. One of the biggest divides in popular arts is fandom. Many fans of comics, video games, and more simply do not know about the wealth of self-published black characters that are available. Most fans, spoiled by the multi-million-dollar companies' habits with giant releases and comics available every Wednesday in national shops, don't want to shop online for indie books. They complain that the seemingly underground movements such as the Black Age and related are too obscure. Some say the books, I stress some, say the books don't come out frequent enough. Others complain that the art or writing is not as good as some of the mainstream books they prefer. What do you say to this type of critique, and does it hinder your work?
I don't let haters influence me at all.
Motivators.
Yeah, you know, like Dawood was talking about, I think that's when it comes into, you know, sometimes you gotta kind of meet these people head on. You know, just go, because I've gone to different conventions that have nothing to do with just black comic books. You know, I've gone to just anime conventions, stuff like that, and I've been to film festivals. So, you know, sometimes you just gotta put your work out there like that. Now, in the film festival circuit, I've found people more, especially the independent films, they're more receptive to the stuff that I do, just because it's something that, you know, they don't know anything about. It's something different that they want to see. So it's just a matter of, you know, getting to the people. And like I said, if they don't like it, they don't like it. I can't force myself on anybody. So I just feel like you just got to put yourself out there and see what sticks.
Yeah.
I look at it, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I look at it as though if somebody's critiquing my work, I'm doing something right.
Right.
I've gotten your attention. So I'm going to continue to do that, because if you continuously have something to say, it must have some type of impact on you, because you keep talking about my work. So I figure I'm going to go ahead and keep it going, because other people are going to hear that and say, okay, well, what is she critiquing about, and why are they critiquing about it? And maybe let me figure out what is wrong, or if there is something wrong. So I mean, I figured go ahead and talk, because that way it's going to stir up some more attention for me to get.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, like, whenever I hear anything like that, I just be like, well, I guess, you know, I guess that's not my customer. You know what I mean? But I don't stress it out, because you know, everybody is not going to be a consumer of your product, and you don't put your energy on that person who's complaining about something about your product. You put your energy into the person that is supporting the product. I'll listen to what they say, and I assess, and I'll do what I can to try to see, okay, maybe I need to do this to go into that angle, but I don't kill myself over it, because there may be a specific reason why I'm doing what I'm doing that they may not understand. Because as an independent, of course, you know, you're going to find Marvel everywhere. You're going to find this everywhere. The average person like that, I wonder, have you ever done an independent venture to understand why it's difficult for an independent? Because we're not financed like that to come out every monthly, bi-monthly rather. You know, so, you know, and I think if you put your head too heavy into that, it just defeats you. You'll be defeated by their words, and you might as well just stop and just get a job somewhere. So I never let that stop me. I mean, I could tell you like mad stories. I mean, I got mad stories from when we first came out. You know, people complaining about, you know, like I said, if you don't have Marvel and DC behind you, you're wasting your time. You know, things like that. But to me, I always look at that as that's the challenge. You know, somebody saying what you can't do. So it's like, okay, I'm showing, you know, we can get it done, and we achieved it. So that's always going to continue. You just gotta know what it is that you want to do, and stay on that path, and get it done.
This is another part of this same question in a way. And if you feel like it's kind of repeating itself, answer it however you see fit. But at many comic book conventions, it's extremely rare to see any black fans do cosplay. If you don't know what cosplay is, basically dressing up as your favorite character, in short, of independent black characters, for many of the reasons we've just described, or even as, say, milestone media characters, which did have mainstream history and fandom. Shaquille O'Neal brands himself physically with a tattoo and general association with the character Superman, even though he played still a second-string black character from the same DC universe. Members of the legendary hip-hop crew Wu-Tang Clan have aliases from Marvel Comics characters like Iron Man and Ghost Rider. Even the underground MC, MF Doom, associates himself totally in image and iconography with the Marvel Comics European mastermind villain, Dr. Doom. Do we as indie creators want such associations with our characters in pop culture, especially considering the fact that what we're doing is related so hard, I mean, is part of hip hop, okay? Do we want diehard fans who can recall our books and art and words better than us? And do we want the same level of cultural impact and commercialism, even if created via primarily alternative methods?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's going to take time.
Mm.
I mean, Marvel and DC got what, 60-year head start?
Mm.
Probably longer than that. I don't know the exact date.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we looked at Warren Evans,
Mm.
and you see he only had one book out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I look at it like, and this is just coming like from my whole spiritual perspective of like his spirit set a precedence and put an energy out there that is actually now it's getting to the next level. So it's almost like that energy is now working with this energy to take it to the next level, and it's just going to keep stacking on itself until it gets to that level where it's because everything we created is, you know, out of all the creators now that we're talking about,
right.
the contemporary Black comics creators, we're not 40 years in yet with our works. And, you know, like when you say like, you know, a lot of like, you know, MF Doom, he grew up on Dr. Doom. You know, I actually have people now say, yeah, I grew up on your books, and that's in 20 years. So look at their children where we need more time
Right.
for it to actually be ingrained in people's minds. You know, because all these other characters that you discussed are household names. You know, Wu-Tang grew up on all these iconic MCs and all them who reference Marvel comics and things like that. You know, they grew up with that. But at the same time, there's also, because I always look at this like, you know, in some records they may reference Rocky as, you know, I'll knock you out like Rocky, when we have Tyson and Ali and the list goes on and on
Right,
and on.
right,
With
right.
Rocky's not even a
with
real
black,
boxer.
yeah, with the black heavyweights.
Right.
So at some point, yeah, there is the household name element. And then the other point, there's just what you see as the hero, the true hero, or the God image that's in your mind that actually comes out in what you brand on yourself.
Let me
You
say
see
this
what I'm
too, I'm
saying?
curious, just add this. Would you also say that, when I was saying like, would you want that type of association with your characters? For instance, you know, MF Doom, if you know, how many of y'all know who MF Doom is, right? Okay. For folks who are like fans of MF Doom, I like MF's flow and all that, but I'm no advocate of smoking weed, and he's big on that. So I'm saying, if you got a character that as a hero represents the anti-weed perspective, and then somebody says, yo, I'm like brother man, call me such and such, you know what I'm saying? Would you feel that is an honor, or would you go, oh God,
Actually, I've seen that happen.
Okay.
I was watching a freestyle flow and somebody said he was like brother man. Blah, blah. I was like,
But you weren't feeling
yeah,
it.
we wouldn't actually do it like that. But it goes show it was in his mind.
It was in there, yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like, I can't control what somebody's going to, like, just as in their speech process. Man, I'm gonna knock you out like brother, man. You know, when the person probably didn't do something, he wouldn't have knocked you out like that. But, you know, in his mind, like, you know, there's
Right.
power. I'll
Right.
knock you out. So
Right.
that's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about them repping it. Like, because MF Doom, I'm pretty sure he's not Marvel, like a Marvel Comics brand. Right. So what I'm saying is like, I'm just saying in terms of an influence,
Yeah.
where people are talking about your character in a day-to-day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Regardless of what it is that they're doing, they're talking about your character. That's what I'm saying, yes, sir. I can't control, like, if somebody's into contraband or if it's a little kid with, you know, playing with their friends at school. I just want them to have it on their mind,
Right.
you know?
Okay. Grace?
To kind of answer the first part with your question, I mean, I think, yes, you know, we want to have that exposure, because, you know, any exposure is good exposure, I think. And so, I'm trying to, you were asking about, do we want the indie fans or the indie comics to kind of be like the mainstream?
Like what's the main, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because eventually, as the brother here said, in about 20 years, you know, our name will be household names. And I think with consistency and with time, it's going to get there. And we just kind of have to have a little bit of patience. And I know that's probably like a taboo thing to say, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's going to take time, and it'll happen soon. Because just think about it. I mean, all those Marvel comics, they were created back in the '60s, and they're just making movies about it now.
Right.
So it'll take time, and maybe when I'm old, some black kid that watched or read one of my comic books will make a Knuckleheads movie or something. And that's the main thing for me is I want to inspire the young as well, because it's not I don't want to just end with me. I want to inspire somebody else to do it, just like I was inspired to.
No doubt. All right, I'm gonna ask one more question and then we'll get into audience Q&A. And we'll try and cut that at a period where we can still do some presentation of books if you're interested. We have some artists put out some merchandise you can purchase, some of these books we're talking about. We are now living in the tech age, the matrix, so to speak. How important is it to you that black comic books and related pop arts, from our perspective, be digital versus in print? How important is social media to your projects? And ultimately, do you feel that digital-based methods of creation, promotion, sales, and products presentation trump traditional methods of print, radio, word of mouth, hand-created art, and related? I'm talking everything. I'm talking about from the way you create to the way you promote. Do you feel that it's a total positive thing to be more digital? Or do you feel that it's still important to maintain some of what we do naturally humanly?
I think it's important to have it all, not just concentrate on the digital, because electricity can go out, and you just don't want to have anything to work on. So yeah, I think it's important to have the the digital sales, because that's what I'm working on now as far as like getting my comic book to be downloaded digitally as well. And but I have the prints right now, so I just think it's good to kind of play both sides of the fence with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I don't think you really abandon the conventional way of doing it. To me, it's just like as an artist, I'll do digital painting, but I still do oils and acrylics, and there's nothing like having a pencil, even though the Wacom tablet flows like a pencil and feels like an eraser, but it's still nothing like walking outside with your sketch pad.
Right.
Now, if they stop manufacturing paper, then I'll just have to use the digital. But we're not at that point right now, and so to me, I just think it's a matter of using a combination of the two to get the elements that you want. But at the same time, we are moving into a digital age. I think we should be adept to knowing how to use it, how to maneuver in this system.
As far as the product itself, because I've had this debate many times on some of the forums, that one in particular, blacksuperhero.com, if you're not familiar, you should check out Hero Talk forum. But the topic came up of, with bookstores going out, do we eventually see the death of the paper book, and are we cool with that? And I immediately was like, no. I love books. I don't ever want to see the day where I can't do this, where I'm just, no, I want this, But how do you feel about that? As far as
I still like books. I mean, but it's a fact that people are doing digital downloads. People like reading their comments on the screen. They like reading them this small. That's not me. But because it's there, I as a company, Big C Entertainment, I'd be crazy not to provide it for those that want that. For me personally, I'd rather be like, I'd rather have a book so I can really just look at the artwork and hold it. There's nothing like having that. So I don't. That's why I say I don't look at one over the other. I just think it kind of should be a combination of the two.
okay.
I think definitely agree with both of them. And it's nothing like having like a tangible item,
Right.
something hardcore. Like you were mentioning about the Warren C. Evans book. If anybody actually has a copy of that, I mean, to me that's like a gold mine. And I remember my mother telling me with my Barbie dolls, like there was one time I said, I want to get rid of either these black Barbie dolls. I was like, I don't want to take them with me, keep them. She's like, well, we need to figure out where we can store them, because I'm telling you, these are going to be worth some money one day. And I really thought, I was like, yeah, I need to hold on to these things. And so, still holding on to the tangible, and at the same time knowing that we need the digital, and they can kind of work hand in hand.